Podcast City Network.
Listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to The Everett Lee Show. A shot of entertainment to the head. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the entertainment.
What's happening, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Everett Lee Show podcast. I'm the Everett Lee. Quick shout out to everyone that follows me on social media. You can follow me at the Everett Lorescore Lee, Facebook.com/Everett Lee. Click that thumbs up. And of course, Podcast City Network, the official host of the Everett Lee Show. Well, I want to say happy 2-year anniversary to Podcast City Network for celebrating 2 years. That's right, 2 years. And if you heard this March, on March 7th, we are going to be co-owning or co-headlining with CCE Presents Seven Kingdoms at City Limits Tap Room. So be sure to check out more information on that when available. But I have my guest on the line tonight. I want to jump right into it. I have on the line, right now on the line, is none other than film director, film producer, Jeremiah Kipp. How you doing tonight, Jeremiah? Welcome to the Everett Lee Show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. I've been wanting to get you on for quite a while. I mentioned that right before we went live. I've been wanting to get you on for a while because looking at your social media and everything that you do with film and indie films, it's just fantastic. All the posts and everything that you share. I love what you do, and been looking into what you've been doing with films, and I enjoy what I see so far. I love it. I love what you do.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And where did that all start out for you? Where did you grow up at?
Well, I grew up in a very rural backwoods town in Rhode Island, which is pretty far from, it's 3 hours away from the New York City that I live in right now, but it's like a world apart, It's like when I was growing up, it was like woods, and growing up with my grandparents who were in their 50s when I was growing up with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest I ever got to indie horror was watching VHS tapes of like Dawn of the Dead or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that. So it was very remote, and it was in the 80s when if you were a horror fan, then the way that you would go about it would be you'd be talking to your cousin or somebody who'd be like, "Oh, I just saw this amazing movie. I just saw this film called Last House on the Left. It was so crazy. I'll bring over the VHS tape." So like that was really, that was my introduction to all the stuff. Was just growing up and having a vivid imagination and seeing the movies that were being made by people like Tobe Hooper and George Romero, who were not studio guys, who were guys that were like, it just seemed like they were going out into their backyards and like making these crazy films.
Right.
And it just made it seem way more achievable for a guy like me who didn't know anybody, who was just a kid that was in the backwoods, like with pickup trucks and shotguns, and deer running around in the backyard, and that was about it. But it was a passion for this certain kind of movie that just seemed really important to me when I was growing up. But that's it. Rhode Island, and a small town called Hopkinton.
Okay, awesome. You mentioned Dawn of the Dead, and you mentioned Last House on the Left. That was a couple of your early films. What other films did you enjoy watching growing up?
Well, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was huge. That was one where you watch that movie and you feel like it was made by crazy people. And it was so important to me. It was like it didn't feel like polished, like a big blockbuster movie like Star Wars or something.
Right.
You saw Texas Chainsaw and you were like, oh my God, these people were out in the middle of nowhere and clearly decided to make this film about Leatherface and his family. And it was one of those moments where I was like, all right, I get that. I get the feeling of this sort of rural dread, that like Texas Chainsaw had. That was like a pretty important movie for me.
Right.
And John Carpenter's The Thing was actually a huge one. Like that, it's kind of like two opposite sides. Like Texas Chainsaw and Dawn of the Dead made it feel really possible.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, people went out and made these things. And then you watch The Thing, and The Thing feels like a studio movie on crack. It feels like, it's like as well made as a Spielberg movie, but
Right.
it's like utterly disturbing with like, these middle-aged guys out in the Arctic, with dogs that are like turning into monsters and people's chests are exploding open and stuff like that.
Right.
So The Thing, like back then and now, I thought was like just one of the most important filmic experiences I ever had. And John Carpenter is just the consummate like filmmaker. He's as
Mhm.
I thought he was as good as Spielberg
Right.
at like visual storytelling. So yeah, Texas Chainsaw, The Thing, Dawn of the Dead. I mean, these movies were really my childhood.
Yeah, those are great movies right there. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, that scared the shit out of me. Now,
Oh yeah,
one movie that I still will not watch to this day. Sooner or later, I will watch it. Being a pansy about it is the remake of the '80s version of the Blob.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
It's got a great director. Like, so it was directed by Chuck Russell,
Mm-hmm.
who's a phenomenal filmmaker. He did Elm Street 3,
Yes.
and then I think he did The Blob right after that. And then the script was by Frank Darabont.
Right.
So you've got like a director that really knows his business. I mean, like it's beautifully shot, it's beautifully acted, it's beautifully made,
Uh-huh.
and then the script is really smart and like and disturbing because you're like, all right, well that's the Steve McQueen guy, and there's the biker guy, and there's the girl, and then like the way that they kill off characters in that movie really upset me because it was like not in the right order.
Uh-huh.
Like it sets you up to really care about like at least 3 people
Right.
who die in the first like 40 minutes of the movie in horrible ways.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's not the right order. That's not the way these things are supposed to go.
Yeah.
And it deeply, I mean, I like you, I felt deeply disturbed because it
Yeah.
felt wrong,
I
know? And that I think was like a great quality of the script was like, you couldn't anticipate it.
Right.
And like, I saw the Steve McQueen Blob before I saw the 1988 Blob.
Yeah, the
So
black and white.
I expected it to be like that. I expected it to be normal.
Yeah.
And it was not normal. It was very disturbing and toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty powerful film.
Yeah, it still gives me chills when the in the hospital, when they're in the hospital and the guy and the Blob falls down and the boyfriend and the girlfriend grabs him and pulls the arm out. That just disturbed me, man. To this day, that still disturbs
That's right.
me. And another movie that's good that I will get around to watching again one day it was like a parody of the Blob. It was called The Stuff. Remember that?
Oh, The Stuff. Yeah. Well, that's got a great actor is the lead actor in that, Michael Moriarty,
Mm-hmm.
and Larry Cohen. He was making movies that were a little subversive. So The Stuff, it's like you watch that and you're like, all right, this is gonna be like kind of a funny, like kind of silly movie. But then like the way that people are dying in that movie, you're just like completely, you don't expect it because you're like, that's not the way that, it's like, like, you when you're a kid, you read Grimm's fairy tales and you're like, Hansel and Gretel show up and the witch is going to eat them. And then and then the shit goes down.
Uh-huh.
And even Texas Chainsaw follows those rules. Like, don't go in the house or you'll get killed.
Right.
But like movies like The Blob and The Stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it was like you might get, your body might not be normal anymore. Like the minute that you're infiltrated, like things are going to be popping out of like weird places.
Yes.
And that's very upsetting because you want there to be some normalcy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And like when normalcy is demolished by the blob or the stuff, then when you're a viewer of a movie, you're like you're thrown into a nightmare. It's like the logic is all thrown out the window, and you're like nothing is going to be as it seems,
Right.
which is deeply disturbing.
It is. Yeah, the logic is it's disturbing, and just how they set up everything, the effects and just the acting. I just love that, man. I just love that. And another like cheesy like sci-fi horror would have to be Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That was just
That's pretty wild. Yeah.
that was
Well, a lot
wild.
of people are disturbed by clowns. Was that something that upset you? And you're like, were you upset by clowns when you were a kid?
Not really. It didn't really upset me. It's just seeing a different take on clowns. I was just like,
Sure.
because I knew it was just the way a clown is someone wearing makeup and acted silly. That's how I looked at clowns when I was a kid. But seeing ones from outer space that's coming to like take over the planet and use humans as consumption for their needs, I was just like, okay, this is just different. But another great movie that I remember as a kid is Chud. That I liked that one.
Yeah. Cannibal human underground dwellers.
Yes.
Well, I remember seeing that. And I had this crazy thought when I was watching the movie. I was like, I have to move to New York City. It's like, which I did. I moved to New York in 1992, but I remember Chud was like part of that, where I was like, it's like, I got to get out of this one-horse town.
Right.
And I got to get into the city where weird stuff happens, like Chud people, And I knew that, like, that was a fiction. But, but there was something about like the cityscape of like a movie like Chud that made me go like, all right, I gotta go there because anything can happen at any time.
Right. Yeah. It's great because it makes you. It would make you want to like go to New York, and is like you see something like that, like your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
It's like something can happen. Could this happen? Maybe that can happen. But having movies like that being an influence for you, when did that help you? Like having all these influences and watching these movies get you into directing? Did you go to college or film school?
I did, yeah. I the way I got into film school was my grandparents got a VHS camcorder, and then I got all my friends together and we made all these movies. So the time I was making like VHS movies was around the time of like Reanimator.
Uh-huh.
So I made movies for a couple of years that were all these sort of like zombie movies and stuff like that. And then I cut a little reel together, and my art teacher helped me like get some scholarships and grants. I went to New York University. So in 1992, I moved to New York, and I went to NYU, and I went to film school, and it was fantastic. It was like because I'd always been in like the backwoods and just like rural back roads and shotguns, pickup trucks.
Right.
And moving to the city, I felt like such a country boy. Moving into the Big Apple. But, it was like a great school. It was like amazing people who'd gone to the school I'd gone to, like Scorsese and Spike Lee and the Coen brothers and people like that.
Yes.
So I got a really good like classical film school education. And that was where I started to like learn technique. It's like up until then I was kind of winging it.
Right.
And then, like, being in film school, that's when you're like, oh, John Carpenter was really inspired by John Ford and Howard Hawks. And, he was using widescreen. And, you're learning all this, like, stuff that you do with the camera.
Right.
And I was like, man, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about making movies. And film school was good for me in that way. And then, the other good thing about film school is you meet like-minded people who are all like, yeah, let's go make movies together. So once I got out of film school, I started working with this bunch of people who were, like you get out of film school and you're like, what am I going to do? It's like, I don't have any money. I can't make a feature film.
Right.
how am I going to survive. New York is very expensive. So I worked for various like film companies, but the more important thing was I had a bunch of friends who were all like, we've got a camera, we've got some editing equipment. Let's make a movie every Sunday, and we'll call ourselves a Sunday Club. Let's make movies. And like that was really good for me. So like every Sunday we're out there like making movies. And I encourage any filmmaker who's like, how do I get into show business? What do I do? It's like you can go to film school, which is what I did, and you learn a lot. But just as important, if not more so, is like find like-minded people who are like as film nerdy as you are.
Right.
Who are like, let's get together. We'll have a really nice lunch, and we'll make some crazy movie. And I did that for many years. It's like I got out of film school in '96.
Right.
And, I was making a bunch of these, like, sort of shitty movies for years. Like 1999, I made my first, like, big movie and, like, tried to put it in film festivals, and it was a disaster. It was like nobody wanted it. And I kept going. And in 2003, I made another movie. It was based on something that had happened to me when I was a little kid. It was a movie about a little kid that goes to a Christmas party that's run by Christians, like hardcore Christians,
right,
who want everybody else to be Christian too. So it had kind of an Invasion of the Body Snatchers vibe.
Okay.
Only it's like a religious conversion crazy movie. And that one played for like 3 years, and it was a festival hit, and like horror festivals played it, and non-horror festivals played it. And like it booked me, like, people saw that and were like, oh, there's a bunch of little kids in it. We'll pay you to direct our commercials. And I wound up like learning a lot about not just making a movie, which, film school and working on these other things have done.
Right.
But then you start learning a lot about show business and about like actually getting paid to show up and direct things. So I did that for a while. And I did commercials. I was an assistant director on various feature films.
Nice.
I learned a lot from, I became friends with a horror film director in New York named Larry Fessenden, who directed Habit and Wendigo at the last winter, and all these great movies. But he produced a movie called I Help the Dead with Angus Scrimm from Phantasm and Ron Perlman, the great Ron Perlman from Hellboy and so on, and Dominic Monaghan from Lord of the Rings. And it was a period horror film about grave robbers who had various adventures. I was the assistant director on that.
Okay.
And like that was like $1 million movie. So I was like, oh God, it's like I worked hard. I still felt like that country boy from Rhode Island who didn't know anything.
Right. Right.
And I learned a lot about I learned a lot about everything. I learned a lot about how to deal with a crew that doesn't give a fuck about your feelings. I learned a lot about like working with movie stars, and like they're all very different. They were like Dominic Monaghan was very different from Ron Perlman, was very different from Angus Scrimm.
Right.
They're all. I mean, like all three of them were very different guys. Like Angus Scrimm was like the most beautiful person you could possibly meet. Like a generous, old school Hollywood guy. Like old Hollywood, where he treated everybody like we were part of a very special club. Okay. It's like, oh, isn't it great that we get to make these movies? And he would call people like these names that were from like the 1950s or like the Great Gatsby or something. He'd be like, "Hey, old man, it's very good to be here with you today." Whatever. And you're like, "Man, you are a different generation than us. You are old school, classical, like great guy." And then Ron Perlman was more. He brought his dog to set with him. I think the dog's name was like Chumley or something like that. Okay. But like Ron would show up and like was incredibly. Like had a great sense of humor about the whole process. Like didn't take it too seriously. He was like, you know what? I could just as easily not be here, but I was on the swim team and they were like, we need a tall actor to be in the school play. Perlman, get out of the pool and come be in the play. And he's like, oh, this is what I love doing, and so he kind of just enjoyed the whole process. Right. And then Dominic Monaghan was like from Lord of the Rings, so he was used to like huge budget movies.
Yeah.
And was a very nice guy, but also like very detached from getting to know the scrappy crew.
Uh-huh.
He was kind of like used to working with 300 people, so
Right.
he didn't get to know anybody that well. He just went in and did his job, and it was very nice and very cool and very good to work with.
Right.
Always very nice to me. But like I was one of like 300 people in his life. He didn't really know anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, all right, now I know what it's like. It's like Angus Graham, Ron Perlman, Dominic Monaghan. It's like, all right, now I get like a full picture of what it's like to work with actors who are on a different planet than you are.
Right. Right.
And then, that was, and then once I'd done that, then I got back into directing again and moved on from there.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you some of the people that you worked with, and I heard Ron Perlman. He's a class act, man. He's professional.
He's a great guy,
and he's really great. And I was bummed that they didn't use him for another Hellboy movie, man, because I thought he made that come to life off the comics there, and I loved him in Sons of Anarchy. I know
those movies are so good with Perlman playing Hellboy.
Yeah, that's when I think of Hellboy, I think of him. That's it. And
totally.
Sons of Anarchy. Me and my wife, we were fan of that show. We watched all 7 seasons, and the character who played Clay was just great. He's a class act, man. I love that. That is awesome that you get to work with him.
Great guy, great actor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who else have you've worked with? I know you worked with Tom Sizemore on Black Wake.
Black Wake.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Tom Sizemore, so that was my third feature.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked Sizemore. He was great to work with.
Right.
My very first time directing a name actor was in 2010, and that was my first feature. It was called The Sadist, and that was with Tom Savini. And Tom was great. It's like Tom showed up. Horror fans will know him from Dusk Till Dawn, and he did special effects on Creepshow and Friday the 13th and so on. Well,
nice.
I was hired to do a Killer in the Woods movie, and they were like, who do you think should play the killer? And I was like, well, let's get Tom Savini. And we got Tom, and Tom showed up, and I'd heard a lot about him. So the way he is at conventions and stuff is, he's a pretty difficult guy.
Mm-hmm.
He has no time for anybody.
Right.
It's like he's not interested in your opinion.
Right.
But I don't know. I had a feeling about him. I was like, the director of photography, Dominic Savilli, who I've worked with for many years. Dom and I were like, Savini's coming. Why don't we cut together 4 minutes of footage from this movie so he knows that we know what we're doing. So
right.
Tom shows up and he immediately acts like a huge dick. He's like, put the camera here. He starts directing the other actors. He starts doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, Tom, that's great. We really value your opinion. But here's 4 minutes of our footage. Why don't you check it out and see what you think? And then he watched it and he was like, oh, good. Great. I'm going to go get ready now. And then he went and got ready, and he covered himself in dirt and shit, and got very Lon Chaney about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then he showed up on set, and he was so good to work with. I mean, he was easy to work with. He cared about us. He was supportive of the crew. He was supportive of his co-stars. He took direction. Anytime I had a note for him, he would incorporate it.
Right.
The only time he was an asshole was the food on set one day was pretty bad. The producers didn't take care of anybody.
Uh-huh.
And then they took him out to lunch, and we're like, Tom, tell us all about Friday the 13th. And he's like, no, why don't you tell me about the food situation for the crew? And then we got fifth head really well for the rest of the job. And Tom really took care of us. He cared about how we felt. And on the last day of the shoot, there's a bit where a truck hits Tom and all this stuff. And we had a stuntman there.
Yeah.
And they're like, here's the truck, and the truck is going to hit you, Tom, and then the stuntman will jump on, and everything will be good. And he's like, well, don't you think it'd be great if I did it? And I'm like, Tom, you're not going to jump on the hood of that thing. You're 70 years old. And he's like, no, I know how to do it. And he talked us through how we could drive the truck up and have him jump on it safely. And then he would ride in and get pinned to the wall or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, Tom, if you're crazy enough to do this stunt at 70 years old, I'm crazy enough to shoot it. And then sure enough, everything was safe. Tom was safe. Everybody was safe. He did the stunt. And it was great. He was right. You know, it was like, there's Tom Savini doing this fucking crazy stunt, and you can tell. And it was really good. And then, like, when Tom wrapped and we finished with him, he gave me a huge hug and was like, "You're a bright guy." And that was my Tom Savini experience, which could have very easily been bad if I showed up and not been prepared.
Right.
You know,
right.
he was ready to take over the whole movie and be like, "Fuck you. I don't know who you are. You know, I'll direct the movie and you can just sit in your chair and watch." You know, but like he felt like I knew what I was doing, and he would do anything for me, and I really appreciate that. And that is advice to directors who are working, you know, your first time working with a Michael Berryman or a Kane Hodder or a Bill Moseley or any of those guys.
Yeah,
you know, it's like you really have to be prepared. You know, you have to show up ready to play. He's not going to wait for you.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to give you any concessions. But if you show up and you're like, I'm ready to play too, we're going to play soccer, and I'm just as good a soccer player as you are, then he will respect that and be like, all right, yeah, we're going to play together. We're going to play make-believe together. All we're doing is playing make-believe. You're paying me to pretend that I'm a monster, and that's all we're doing. It's the same thing we did when we were 12 years old running around the woods. And like, I think that's really important, is like, if you're working with those people, you can't put them on a pedestal.
Right.
You can't treat them like they're like a god. You got to be like, it's me and Tom from Pittsburgh out there, like, you know, and we're going to play good guys and bad guys.
Right.
And I know where to put the camera. I've shown, you know, it's like, you can trust me, and we're in it together. And then like, once Tom believed that, he was with me 150%. And then Sizemore was the same way, who like, yeah, right, so Tom Sizemore, that was my third feature. It was called Black Wake.
Right.
It's like H.P. Lovecraft, like monsters busting out of like the elder gods, like doing crazy shit, and parasites and so on. People's heads are exploding.
Yeah.
And Sizemore is playing a detective, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard all, like, you know, Sizemore was like phenomenal in the 90s, Natural Born Killers and Heat, Saving Private Ryan, and Strange Days. But, you know, it's like, since then, you know, you've got like a Tom Sizemore who's got a terrible drug problem, and you hear horrible stories, and you're like, I don't know what Tom Sizemore is going to show up today.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And I never met him. I'd never spoken to him. And sure enough, he shows up and is just like Tom Savini. He's like, where's my room? I'll come to set when you're ready to do your thing. And, but then like, he shows up on set, and the other actor is phenomenal. This like, you know, 22-year-old kid who's incredibly well prepared.
Right.
And then Sizemore figures out we know where to put the camera, and we know what we're doing. And Sizemore sees that the other actor is going to totally take the scene from him if he doesn't, you know, do the work. And you could tell Sizemore was like, all right, I am going to be a good scene partner for this guy. I'm going to really care about what I'm doing. And I really loved Tom. You know, I was with him for like, you know, he was there for a couple of days.
Right.
And he was sober. He was prepared. He cared about acting. He really cared about the person he was in the scene with. He didn't give us any crap at all. Like and then, you know, like at the end, you know, like the funny part for me was like, Tom had to make a phone call at one point. He's calling his mother. Right. And I'm like, oh man, he's still Tommy from Detroit.
Right.
He's not Tom Sizemore. He's just this guy who did these cool movies and is very experienced. I mean, he's way more experienced than anybody on the set right now.
Right.
But like, he's also just like a dude who is there doing his job, and he likes what he does. You know, he likes acting. I was very lucky. He was coming off of a Nicolas Cage movie, so he was very clean and sober.
Yeah.
And he was just about to do Twin Peaks with David Lynch. So I caught him at the perfect time where he was like not on drugs. He was not messed up.
Yeah.
He was just an actor's actor. He was there for the movie. He was there to take direction, you know? So, not every actor has been like that for me. I mean, I've worked with some real fucking assholes, you know, like, there was a guy, you know, who, a famous actor who, showed up on set and like really wasn't there for his co-stars. He was, I don't even know how to begin talking about him. Like he would, if the camera is supposed to be in a 2-shot with him and another actor who's less famous than him, he would kind of set himself up in a spot where like it wasn't a 2-shot; it'd be an over the shoulder that was facing him.
Yeah.
And I saw him doing it. I was like, man, you are really being unfair to this other actor. It's supposed to be about both of you guys. Mm-hmm. He's like, no, I'm trying to do a thing to open up the space. And I'm like, no, your mark is right here. You're overshooting it.
Yeah.
And so he, I don't know, he was just one of those difficult guys that didn't care about the whole movie. He just cared about himself.
Right.
But Tom Sizemore was not that. Like Tom was all about the other actor, all about the movie, all about making it kind of as good an experience for all of us as it could be. He cared, I remember there was a bit like we were doing a shot and we were just rehearsing it, and somebody was talking in the other room, and he poked his head into the other room and was like, "Stop talking! We're making a movie." And I was like, "Man, this guy really cares about what we're doing here." It was like that good feeling that I had, like the Angus Scrimm feeling of like, we are all part of a very special club that gets to play make-believe. Right. And it's really wonderful that we get to do this, and we should respect the process and respect the journey. Mm-hmm. And that was what Tom was like. I mean, it's like I told Tom afterwards, I was like, thank you. Yeah. And I was like, I learned so much from working with you. I learned so much about just how to behave on the set. And, you could tell he was very humble about it. It's like acting is his life. I mean, like the entire rest of his life outside of acting is probably totally out of control. Yeah. But like when he's on set and when he's like in a scene and he's doing a scene with another actor, and then we take a break and there's the catering, and like then we come back in and we're playing make-believe again and a different thing, and he's firing a gun at people. It's like he loves it. He loves playing make-believe, and so that was like true for Scrimm and Savini and Sizemore, like all those guys. It's like we shouldn't put these people on a pedestal because like they look at themselves like the person they're playing Cowboys and Indians with in the woods. They're the same thing. They're more experienced than you are. They've done it more than you have, but they're doing the exact same thing that you are. And that was like what I learned from Sizemore, and I really thank him for that. It was a really great lesson to learn.
That's fantastic, man. That's fantastic. That's awesome that you learned that from him, and he sounds cool. He sounds
he's cool, really cool,
and just when he's there, he works and he does care. That's great because it does make
150%.
150%. You're putting your time and effort into making something. You on Black Wake, Eric Roberts, he was in that too.
Yeah, Eric was there.
Yeah, Eric.
Yes.
Eric Roberts.
Eric is from New Orleans. He's a crazy guy. He's actually we cast him on purpose. We were like we had a role that was like he had to do a lot of exposition. So he's got to rattle off all these facts about the science of what's going on, and it was like, let's get Eric. He's a weird guy, and he is. Like he shows up and he's very eccentric. It's like he's on his own planet.
Yes.
But Eric also is a lot of fun. He's a hoot. He's got a lot of stories. Mm-hmm. He's kind of nuts. He's doing his own thing. But like that is what we needed for that part because like if we cast somebody who was not Eric Roberts, like it would be kind of a bland, kind of vanilla. He's a scientist. It's like one of those kind of roles. And we needed a little zaniness. So it was like, cast Eric, he'll show up, he'll be weird, he'll be fine. And he was totally bizarre.
That's amazing. That is. And of course we have a couple mutual friends, Tom Ryan and Todd Strutch. They had a part.
I love those guys.
They had a part in Black Wake too as well, right?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I mean, like, well, first of all, Tom Ryan is a great director.
Yes.
So, like, Theater of Terror and the short films that he did, I mean, like, he's one of my heroes, and he's got such a powerful, strong personality.
Yeah.
So, like, with Tom Ryan, it's like I needed a guy who would show up, and the character's head has to explode, and a parasite comes out, and he has to beat the shit out of somebody. And I was like, Tom Ryan. Like, cast Tom, because, like, Tom is gung-ho, and we'll go for it. And then Tom comes in and does the thing, and he's great. And then Tom, of course, he's got a great sense of humor. He does the scene. He's like, you know what? You should call this movie The Fisherman because that's my character. You know, he's the fisherman. He comes in and he does it. But like Tom was great. You know, he was in for a couple days and like nailed it. And then Todd Staruch at the time of Black Week was like more of a like a horror personality, like a guy who was programming horror films, like doing film festivals and stuff. And I had this little part where I was like, like there's this guy who he was playing Tom Ryan's friend, so he's like, yeah, I saw my friend, his head explode and his brains came out. And I was like, we gotta get Todd Staruch in here to do this. And Todd Staruch showed up and he's got his fishing vest on and he steals the movie. He's only in like a little bit of it, but he shows up and he's like doing his thing. And it's like, this guy is great. And then we gave the footage to the editor, and she's like, this guy's the best person in the whole movie. He's like hilarious. He's so adorable. And then, we showed audiences, and they get like such a rise out of like Todd Staruch when he shows up. He's so good in it. And then my most recent feature, Slapface, I was doing a bar scene with some famous actors in it. And I was like, I got to get my friends there. So I cast like all these like indie horror directors who are my friends. Mm-hmm. So I got Tom Ryan and Patrick Devaney and like people like that. And I was like, Todd Staruch, please show up. And they all came and they're like hanging out in the bar while like Dan Hedaya and Lee Beverere from Sneaky Pete and August Machuro from The Nun are doing these scenes, and all my friends who are these great directors are like hanging out like in the bar. And I was like, this is how you make movies, man. Even if you're working with famous people. Right. It's like, you have the famous people, they're doing the scene, but like surround yourself with your friends because like Patrick and Tom and Todd, like they were so supportive. They were so happy to be there. They're really talented people. Like the movies that they make are really good. Like Patrick, I think, is a visionary sci-fi horror director. Mm-hmm. Like he's my hero. Like he's like the DIY, like best of the best of like indie horror directors on the East Coast, in my opinion. Yes. And to have them like showing up and supporting you, while you're doing your $300,000 indie horror feature, like that, it doesn't get any better than that. No. It's like, and then you're like, my friends are here and the famous people are here and we got a great crew and we're making the movie. And that was a feature that I did. We're in post on it right now, but I directed that in October into November of last year. And that was called Slapface, and that was an indie horror monster movie that was a really special experience for me. Yeah, I was going to ask about that because Slapface, I noticed when I was going through your bio on IMDb, you did a short called Slapface, but that's right. You reshot it into a feature film. And when I read the plot of the story, I was like, wow, this is going to be interesting. A boy becomes a friend with a dangerous monster. That sounds really good there. I'm looking forward to seeing thank you. That was a really special experience. Yeah. So like the deal with that was, so I wrote this feature-length horror movie called Slapface, and it's a boy and a monster. And like the vibe of it, it's like, it's not Harry and the Hendersons. It's more like, I love Phantasm, like that's like a little kid in a horror movie that is adult, So Slapface was that. It's like a little kid makes friends with a monster, but adult things are happening. Uh-huh. It's like the murder is real and lethal and dark and really fucked up, Uh-huh. And so I'm trying to make that movie for years. Like I'm doing all this other stuff. I'm doing The Sadist. I'm doing Black Wake. I'm doing all these other movies. Right. And I'm trying to make Slapface. Producers come and go, but like nobody really understood the tone of it. They're like, it's like Harry and the Hendersons, right? I'm like, no, it's like Phantasm, and people like you and me know what Phantasm are, but like producers with like $300,000, like, what the fuck is Phantasm? Right. And you're like, you have no idea, So I'm like, all right, maybe I'll never make Slapface. Uh-huh. And then Dom, the director of photography, Dominic Savilli, who shot The Sadist, he's been my friend for many years. He's been my director of photography on many projects. Right. He's like, hey, why don't we, that Slapface thing, why don't we do it as a short? I'll pay for it. Let's make it as a short. I'm like, great. So I like take the feature, I distill it down into like a 5-6 page thing. Right. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And he's like, well, why don't we crowdfund? And I'm like, cool. We start crowdfunding. We make the money that way. We get like, $5,000 or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's awesome because I don't have any money. I don't have it. It's like, but I really wanted you to make things. So let's go make it. So we get a special effects artist. We go make the short. And I'm like, we make the short, and it's a very good experience. We had good actors and a great crew, and everybody was there for the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt satisfied. I was like, you know what? If nothing else happens with this feature, I don't care. We made this short. I care about it. I love it. We did the film festival thing. It played for like 3 years, and it did well. And I was like, you know what? I'm satisfied artistically. It like doesn't even matter if I make the feature or not. And but because it did well in film festivals, these producers had caught wind of it, and they were like, "Oh, what's this Slapface thing?" And these producers, like, this was around the time that like movies like Hereditary and The Babadook were coming out, and it was like, and they were looking for like a dysfunctional family drama story with a monster in it, and they're like, "Well, Slapface is that, it's a kid and his brother." And like, it's a family story that's all fucked up. Like the story outside of the monster is damaged and scary and upsetting and traumatic.
Right.
And then the monster like kind of fills in that niche, that horror niche, where it's like the witch or it's like the Babadook, where it's like without the monster in it, it's scary and it's like Hereditary. Without the supernatural in it, the family is all fucked up and interesting.
Yeah.
And then put in the supernatural, and it's really unnerving and fucked up and scary.
Yeah.
And that's what these producers wanted. They wanted something like that. So I am grateful for The Babadook. I am grateful for Hereditary. I'm grateful for Midsummer. I'm grateful for all those movies that came out that were that type of thing. Because without them paving the way for that kind of movie, like Slapface never would have gotten made. But like they liked the short, and they read the feature, and they were like, yeah, this is great. We can make this movie. And then they found the money, and they were like, they made an offer to August Maturo, who was the kid from The Nun, which was the Conjuring movie.
Yeah.
And August was amazing. He was like the best child actor you could dream of, an ally, a friend. Like he showed up and like was Tom Sizemore. He was ready to play, like ready to do all the stuff. He's 12 years old and a delight to work with. There was none of that like child actor snobbishness. He was more like, no, I love horror movies. And I love this character, and I love that I'm friends with the monster, and I believe it. And then Libe Barrere was an actress from a TV show called Sneaky Pete, and she played the female lead. And then it's very interesting because the sheriff, we had another actor attached for a while who was a very famous, wonderful actor, and it's no problem. I mean, like he did a big studio movie, and his cachet went back up, and he couldn't do our movie anymore. And then suddenly we're like, who are we going to cast? And then we made an offer to an actor named Dan Hedaya, and Dan has been in everything. Like Dan was in Cheers. He was in Blood Simple, which was the Coen brothers' first movie. He was in The Addams Family. He was in Clueless. He was in The Usual Suspects, Mulholland Drive. He's been in everything. So, like, Dan's been in every single movie ever, right? And so his agent and manager are like, hey, you want to do this movie Slapface? It's a horror movie. And he's like, nah. And then he's, like, going on living his life, and he's like, Slapface, what a good title. And he's like, I feel called to this movie. He's like, send me the script. And he reads it. He reads the whole thing. And he's like, I have to do it. And then, like, when he shows up on set, he was like, I read the script, and I'm interested in the whole movie. I'm not just interested in my part, But, like, I feel like, when I'm in your movie, I feel like I have to fit into the big picture of your movie. So tell me everything your movie is about. And I was like, holy crap, this guy really cares. This guy is really, he's 79 years old.
Wow.
And he shows up and he's like, I want to know everything about what your movie is.
So he's pretty much ready to go then.
And he's ready to go. Yeah. No, he's doing these scenes and you're like, man, I want to be like you when I'm 79 years old. You know, he still cares completely, and not just about his part. You know, he didn't show up and be like, I'm the sheriff. He was like, I am part of your movie. I'm part of the mosaic of what you're doing. I'm part of the bigger picture.
Right.
So tell me what you really are doing with this movie, and I will be a part of that. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man. You know, it's like you were making movies when I was 12. You know, I was 12 when I saw Blood Simple. You know, I was like, I saw that movie and I was like, I want to make movies because I love Blood Simple. And now, like, that actor is doing my movie. And it's like, dude, I cared about you when I was 12. You know, it's like when I was 12, I saw you and was like, I want to make movies.
Right.
You know, and then he's part of your thing. And he's kind of like, and you know, it's like, that's the thing about these famous actors is like, they're like, I will give myself over to what you're doing, you know, and it was very moving to me. I was like, well, thank you. You know, it's like I'm like half your age and I don't know half as much as you do, but like, I'm grateful that you're showing up and giving me everything. And he really did, you know, it's like, the guy's got to do this, like, it's a horror movie. So like at a certain point, you got to like lie there covered in special effects, you know?
Right.
It's like, I'm sorry, man, you're 79 years old and I got to cover you in this shit. And he's like, no, it's great. It's great. I know what you're doing. I care about it. I'm happy to lie here and do whatever you want. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. You know, it's like, man, I want to be you when I'm 79, 80 years old. I want to care as much. You know, I want to show up on a movie and be like, I am so excited about getting covered in this fucking special effects shit. You know, it's like, because we cared about, you know, he's 79. And again, it's like Angus Scrimm or Tom Sizemore. It's like we cared about the exact same things when we were 12.
Right.
You know? Right. And here we are. We're making this movie. We're playing cops and robbers. We're playing monsters and victims. And we get to do this. And we're getting paid to do this. We're getting paid to show up and do this ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
And commit to it. And like that's the thing that's really beautiful about guys like Dan and Tom and you know, Savini, Sizemore, Dan Hedaya, August Pachuro, who was 12, all of them. They all show up and they're like, we are there for you. And it's like, you know, not everybody, you know, like, you know, it's like if you work in show business long enough, you're going to work with actors who are like, I don't really give a fuck. I barely know my lines. I'm going to do the bare minimum of what's required for you. You know, and you're like, oh man, it's everybody in show business an asshole. But like, actually it's not true. Like 90% of the people you meet are going to be like super fucking awesome and cool and still care about it. Well, and then when you see them care about it, you care about it more. You're like, Angus Scrimm was like in his 80s when he did I Saw the Dead. Like he was like really fucking old. You know, he died like I think 2 or 3 years after that. But like right up until the end, he was like, we are part of a noble profession. You know, we are part of something that is like bigger than us. We are actors. We are filmmakers. We're playing make-believe, you know, and we're getting paid to play make-believe. And isn't it wonderful that we get to do this? And when you watch Angus Scrimm or Dan Hedaya do that, you're like, yeah, it is fucking awesome we get to do this. Oh my God. You know, it's like, we are so lucky to be here. And then when the entrails come out and like all the fucking blood is all over the floor and like all that kind of shit, you know, you're like, you know what? We're getting paid to do this and it's fun. And like, and you know, it's like, if you did this in real life, you would get arrested. But if you do this in a movie, you are having fun, you know, and you're like, getting to do that thing, which is like, you know, I always wanted to be the Wolfman, or I always wanted to be Dracula, and now you are being Dracula or the Wolfman, or now you are being the mad scientist or whatever,
right?
And that is really fucking cool, you know. And I don't take it for granted ever, you know. It's like show business is strange and weird, and all sorts of things happen. But I've had more great experiences than bad ones, and more great experiences with people than bad ones. And like, and it's continually all about like, the magic of make-believe.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure Lon Chaney felt that way when he was doing The Hunchback. And I'm sure Boris Karloff felt that way when he was doing Frankenstein. And Tom Savini feels that way now, and Sizemore, and all those guys, and me too. It's like, wow, what a privilege to be able to do what we do.
That's amazing, man. That is getting to work with actors that are willing to, go in 100% and just, just take on that role and stuff. It makes it easier for you because it's once they see what you're doing and how you're shooting and they're like, okay, I get it. All right, let's go with it, because I think it excites them, because it's like, all right, I'm with someone, I'm working with someone, I'm under direction of someone that knows what the fuck they're doing. That's
totally.
Yeah. So that's great. I love that.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to mention.
Totally.
I wanted to mention that I wanted to give you congratulations for the list of awards you won for, or you got nominated for Black Wake. I was going through the list.
Oh, thank you.
And I was sitting there looking at all the listings and the awards. I was like, wow, this is great. I love this. And I'm definitely, I did watch the trailer. I haven't watched the movie yet, though, but when I watched the trailer, I'm like, I really want to see this movie now. And I really want to see Slapface, because just the name Slapface just sounds awesome.
Sure.
And it's just the plot of the story sounds really amazing. And I'm looking forward to that. And you have some other movies that I noticed that you have on post-production. For this year, 2020, what does Jeremiah Kipp have in store for 2020? Anything that you can mention that's on the horizon for you?
I sure can. Well, let's see. For the film festivals, there's 2 short films that just came out. So there's one called Perfect that is a feminist twist on the Frankenstein story, where it's like it kind of takes the Frankenstein myth and like relocates it into the New York dating scene. Taken seriously, it sounds like almost like a Saturday Night Live skit, but it's like dark and weird. And that's one that's another proof of concept for a feature. I was working with a great actress named Ashley Tyler. It was her idea. She was like, I want to do this like fucked up Frankenstein movie. And I was like, you're speaking my language. Let's go. Ashley was great to work with. And then there was a comedy of all things called Fizzle. It was kind of like if Seinfeld met the French New Wave, which is very experimental and weird, it would be like Fizzle. It's got a great cast that includes people like Peter Friedman from Succession and Jeffrey Owens, who was on The Cosby Show, and now he's on a TV show called Power. Like, great cast of people. So, like, and it was very cool to be, like, working in the comedy genre after doing so many horror films. Like, doing something quirky and dialogue-driven and weird. Slapface is in post, and we'll hope to unleash that on audiences this year. And then off of Slapface, I booked another horror movie that is shooting in Los Angeles in April. I signed a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't say too much about it, other than to say it's an action horror movie with a well-known British actor who is kicking some demon ass, or monsters.
Nice.
He's fighting some monsters.
Nice.
I can't say anything else other than that, other than the script is really good, and there'll be a lot of mayhem. But that's what I'm shooting in 2020. I may have already said too much, but I was excited about the script, and it was really nice to go from like Slapface like right into another project like right after that. So that's 2020 is 2 short films doing the festival thing, a feature that will be ready to go by at some point in 2020 that the festivals will see, and a feature in production that like will have a lot of blood and a lot of gore and a lot of monsters.
Nice. I'm definitely looking forward to that. I can use my imagination and try to think, it's like, how many British actors do I know? So I'll have to hit the internet, and just
That's right. I'll leave you guessing.
Yeah, just leave me guessing. I love that because it'd be on the horizon there. It's like, okay, and then once I start seeing the stuff on social media, I want to mention about your social media. I love your social media because I love how you put up random pictures of stuff. It kind of reminds me. It's like I get people say you don't post enough on your profile. I was like, I post everything on my Everett Lee show, but my other profile with my real name, I get, you don't post much. I'm like, okay, so I start posting random shit, just crazy stuff. And I like the one post that you put out the other day of Christine. I loved
Yeah,
that. I love that.
I love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I use my social media, like the way I approach social media is, it's not, like, there's not a lot of stuff about my personal life on my social media, but there's a lot about what I care about.
Right.
I love movies. I love horror films. I love non-horror films. I love, like, art movies, and I love great acting. So when I'm doing, Instagram and Facebook, I usually use it as a way to talk about, like, all the things I care about. I care about, like Christine. I love that movie. I think it's a great film. It's well made. The acting is fantastic. Harry Dean Stanton, amazing. The car, great. The widescreen cinematography by, it was Don Morgan, not Dean Cundy. Beautifully shot movie. I'm a super nerd. I'm like Edgar Wright when it comes to, like, loving films. And then, the other thing I use social media for is not for myself, but to promote actors and other filmmakers that I really admire.
Yes.
So, like, if there's people on the East Coast, the West Coast, and the Midwest that I think are great filmmakers, I try to say, Patrick Ray is a great horror director in the Midwest, and I'll try to talk about his work on my social media, or so-and-so is a great actor. You should hire this person. They're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm not doing that, I'm usually talking about movies that I think are great. Like, I just saw, I just saw the 1988 version of The Blob again. Like, how fucking awesome is it that, like, Kevin Dillon's mullet, and Eraserhead is the doctor in that movie, and dude, like, the guy from RoboCop gets, like, sucked out of the thing in the Blob, and Jeffrey DeMunn plays the sheriff. I mean, like, fucking see this movie. If you haven't seen the 1988 Blob, like, fucking shut the fuck up about sequels and watch it, because that movie is great. That's how I use social media. It's like, they don't need to know what I ate for lunch.
Right.
And they don't need to know who I'm dating.
Yeah.
And they don't need to know, what I feel about Bernie Sanders or whoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, because it's like that stuff. I mean, I feel like you get that a lot on social media. There's a lot of politics, and there's a lot of, like, personal stuff. And it's like, you know what? I want to put something out into the world that is unadulteratedly wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
right.
Like, the 1988 Blob is fucking phenomenal, and everybody should go see that movie. Yeah. So, like, I'll post about, like, that, or I'll post about, like, I just saw this, like, freaking crazy film noir from 1955 where at the ending of the movie the world blows up, or whatever.
Yeah.
Kiss Me Deadly is fucking insane, and, like, that's kind of a thing, right? I think it's actually a really nice way to, like, because everybody reads social media, and it's like, there's a lot of heavy shit that people talk about. And then, like, if they're like, if they're scrolling through and then they see the three lead actors of Christine standing in front of that fucking beautiful car, they'll be like, oh yeah, that fucking awesome John Carpenter movie from, like, 1983 or whatever. Like, I'd like to see that again. Yeah. And it's really good. It's a really good movie.
It is. It is. It made me want to get. It made me want to see it again, because the last time I actually seen that movie, I think I was about the first time I seen the movie, I was about 9 years old. It came on HBO and watched it. I loved it and was terrified to get in the car at the same time. But, like, years later,
it really does achieve that.
Yeah, just as I got a little bit older, I watched it again. I'm like, this movie's great. I love it. My favorite scene out of that is
well made.
When he's talking to the car and he's like, "Come on, baby," and I love that.
He's like, "Show me," and then the lights come on.
Yes,
and it's like, whoa, that is a movie moment.
Yeah,
like, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's that's one of my favorite scenes there, because it's like
totally.
It's like the relationship he had with the car and stuff, but I'm still bummed that the car killed him inside.
I know, it's like heartbreaking. Yeah, like, his romance with the car is like even better than his romance with the girl.
Yeah.
played by Alexandra Paul of Baywatch fame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's like actually a really sad movie because Stephen King was always so good at like showing those characters who, like those high school characters who are like totally picked on by everybody, like Carrie White and the kid from Christine. Like your heart goes out to them, and you're like, man, your life fucking sucks. And like, so then it's like he falls in love with this car, of course, because because he's so unloved in school. So Stephen King was always so good at the character stuff. That I think is why Christine is such a great movie. Yeah, because you always, if you're like a horror nerd, then, my high school experience was pretty good, but there are times when you feel totally lonely and totally isolated, and like Christine like captures those feelings perfectly.
Yes.
Where like the best feeling you have in the world is like driving around your car and listening to the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have that relationship. You have that relationship with your car. Everyone has that relationship with their car and stuff. But this one just killed people.
When it's killing the boys, you're just like a part of you is like, fuck them,
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, oh, it's pretty dark. It's like pretty dark shit,
It is. It is.
I love Christine. It's like a very underrated like John Carpenter classic.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I mean, he's a great director, though. He's one of the best of the best. Like They Live and The Thing and
They Live,
Fog and Halloween, and Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes.
No, it's like whenever I meet anybody who hasn't seen Big Trouble in Little China, I'm like, there's two types of people in this world: people who fucking love Big Trouble in Little China, and people who have not seen it yet.
I know. I love that. I haven't seen it in years and stuff. You're making me want to go back and like pull up
very good
and stuff. That
Kurt Russell in his prime.
Yeah. Kurt Russell's just great. Me and my wife, we had a discussion a while back ago about like 80s action movies. When you think of 80s action movies, you think of Schwarzenegger, you think of Stallone, and you think of Bruce Willis. And I said to her, Die
Hard is classic.
Yeah, Die Hard is. And I said to my wife, I said, is there anyone nowadays that can hold that? Is today's Schwarzenegger, Stallone, or Bruce Willis? I can't really think of anyone that can hold.
It's tough. I mean, the closest we get nowadays is like Jason Statham.
Yes.
Who I think is like a pretty good, he's pretty good, but he doesn't have like the movie to support it. It's like back in the 80s, you had Predator, you had, Terminator, you had Die Hard.
Yes.
It's like you had Cobra, you had First Blood. Like the movies could really support the action star. And Jason Statham, I think, if he'd come out in the 80s, he would have had a bunch of kick-ass, incredible films.
Yeah.
But now, it's like the Meg, and you're like, you watch it, and you're like, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his fault. I mean, Jason Statham is really cool.
Yeah.
But the movie around him is not as special or as interesting or as weird as, like, Predator or whatever. And, like, The Rock also is, like, really
Dwayne
charismatic.
Johnson.
I mean, he is as charismatic as Schwarzenegger, but he hasn't had the movies that can support his talent the way that Schwarzenegger did, like Terminator, Total Recall. These movies had good script, like the writing was good, the premise was good. James Cameron, Paul Verhoeven, great directors. And like The Rock is as talented as Schwarzenegger, but he hasn't had the good projects that Schwarzenegger had.
Yeah, he hasn't found that movie, because when you hear the name Schwarzenegger, you think of Predator, the Terminator, Commando.
That's right.
Bruce Willis.
Commando,
yeah. Commando is just great, man. It has the best one-liners.
So good. Yeah.
It does. Just for kicks, one day I found accidentally on YouTube, someone threw together a 2-part video of all Schwarzenegger one-liners from all his movies, and
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, it's great. I think out of all the one-liners, one of my favorite ones was from Twins, when he clotheslines the guy and Danny DeVito says, "What'd you do?" And he's like, "I didn't do nothing."
Fantastic.
Pavement was his enemy. I love that. I love that line.
Oh, that's great. But man, in the 80s, like comedies would have like a bunch of scripts in them, like Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes.
Pretty funny movie.
Oh, God,
but like
yeah.
the end of that movie, like when they shoot the bad guy, they're like fucking blasting him, and like he's got 30 squibs going off. It's like,
Yeah.
and then 48 Hours, like the first Eddie Murphy movie with Nick Nolte.
Yes.
Pretty fucking violent movie where like a bunch of people are getting blown away and killed. You're kind of like, all right, where's that movie now? Like 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop are not getting made now, and that's a crying shame. Honestly, it's like we could use some comedies that have some first class mayhem in them.
Yeah. I would have to say what came close to Beverly Hills in the 90s would have to be Bad Boys, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence. Or actually,
yeah. Well, thank you for saying that, because like I'm a Bad Boys fan also.
Yeah.
It's like I think that everybody hates Michael Bay, but like I think Bad Boys 1 and 2 are really good.
Oh yeah,
and The Rock is really great.
Yes.
But like Bad Boys 1 and 2, it's like, man, you really can't argue with the star talent of those two guys. It's really entertaining.
It is. You can't. Yeah. I love The Rock. I loved Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, and just it was just great. It was great seeing that movie there. Bad Boys, close to Beverly Hills Cop, and
I agree with you. That's a good point.
That's another one. Lethal Weapon. You can't forget about Mel Gibson.
Oh yeah, freaking Lethal Weapon! Like, talk about a violent movie.
Yeah.
It's like that one is like hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got your lead character sticking a gun in his mouth, like being like, maybe I'm going to end it. It's like, wow, that's pretty fucking bold.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that was bold right there. I mean, because look at all the shit his character went through. His wife died around Christmas. Yeah. It's like, you think this guy likes Christmas?
So crazy.
Fuck no, man.
I know, it's crazy. Oh yeah, thanks for mentioning Lethal Weapon. That was like prime. Like Mel Gibson was phenomenal in it.
God,
like, Gary Busey is the bad guy. Like, there were a couple of years where Gary Busey could show up in a movie and be like incredible.
Yes.
That all went away, but but Lethal Weapon era Gary Busey and Predator, up to Predator 2 probably, you're like, he's amazing.
Yeah. and then Gary Busey, you're talking about being a villain. I'm trying to think of the other one. Under Siege, Steven Seagal.
Under Siege.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, him and Tommy Lee Jones is the bad guy. It's like a very good Steven Seagal movie.
Yeah, yes, it was really good. I still, to this day, I remember we were by my stepmom. She rented it at the video store, so we sat down. It was me, my younger stepbrother, me, and my father. So we pop in Under Siege, and then
fantastic.
It got to the part.
Really well made movie.
Yes. It got to the part where Erica Laniak popped out a cake. And Sushi popped out a cake. My stepmom hit stop and said, "Boys, it's time to go to bed." I was like, "No!" It's like, I want to see.
Oh yeah,
I want to see.
Right.
Where's the girl that popped out a cake, man? I want to see that. It's,
awesome.
It's just good memories on that, man. Just different movies and stuff, and just one movie I want to see that just came out. Our good friend Todd Storch said he went and seen it, and he said it was pretty good. And I just watching the trailer for it and just seeing it. I want to see that one with damn, I can't believe her name's slipping my head. She was in Twilight.
Kristen Stewart. Yeah, I was reading good reviews for this. I think it's called Underwater.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Is that it?
Yeah,
it's like Alien Underwater, but like,
yeah,
I saw the trailer and I was like, it looks kind of predictable. But then like the people who saw it, like the word of mouth on that movie is terrific. Like they're like, oh, it's so good. It's like solid, like entertaining. She's great. And it made me think, like, man, it must be one of those, like, movies, like Pitch Black or something like that, where you're like, it's probably going to be kind of stupid. And then people see it, and they're like, no, it's excellent. You got to see it.
It is.
I trust the word of mouth about that movie. Like, I mean, everybody I know, because I was like, fuck that movie, it's going to suck. But, like, every single person I know who's seen it, like, has come back to me and been like, oh, my God, it's really good. Like, the B-movie that you wanted to see is that. So... yeah, like you. I'm like, I got to check it out.
Yeah, I like looking for those movies that you don't hear. That's like a sleeper hit. You don't hear you see a trailer for it, and then people nowadays they shit all over the trailer, and then come to find out that movie's actually good. It's actually
Well, yeah, that was me. I was like, underwater, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, it's awesome. And I'm like, must be.
It reminds...
I'm sure it is, actually. It was like everybody I know whose opinion I really respect about this kind of movie has been like, no, man, it's really good.
it looks
really good.
It looks really good, and it reminds me of three movies. Reminds me of Aliens. Reminds me of The Abyss. It reminds you of that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it reminds you of
I like those movies, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is great. And I mean, the cast, from what I've seen, is pretty damn good. So I'm
pretty damn good.
I'm looking forward to that, because I
can
look past Kristen Stewart stuff from Twilight, because I seen her in what was it, the Snow White movie.
She's really good.
Yeah,
she's a good actress. It's like Twilight. We can't hold that shit against those people. So Robert Pattinson's really good. I mean, he's been doing some fucking bold movies, and Twilight is not their fault. It's they got rich making that movie, and now they can do like the good stuff. So off they run. Yeah,
exactly. Just like the cast with Harry Potter. With Harry Potter.
That's right. Totally.
I'm forgetting her name. I can't believe names are starting to slip.
I can't remember her name right now either, but she's cool. She's been doing good movies. Yeah, good actress.
Yeah, there's one movie that she did that came out a few years ago. It was called Life of Being a Wallflower. I love that.
Oh yeah, I heard that was really good. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a really good. It's a really good movie. I enjoyed it, and just the premise of the movie and the story is just great, because it takes... I like those movies that have that timeline and takes place around the 90s, because I was a teenager. Oh yeah, the
90s were great.
And just a lot of good stuff happened during the 90s when I was a teenager, so I really do enjoy that. So that's...
Yeah, the 90s were a great time for me too. Like good music and good fashion. Flannel shirts, great.
Yes. yes. I loved the grunge scene. I loved Nirvana, Alice in Chains,
Nirvana and the whole stuff like that. Yeah,
I loved them. But right now, people could see I'm sporting a Van Halen shirt. I was sitting there jamming out to Van Halen today. I found my Van Halen shirt. I'm like, I'm gonna put my Van Halen shirt on, man. The Roth era. I remember I was...
Yeah, man. David Lee Roth was a great fucking artist. Like Mr. Charisma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
great band. They had good music. Eddie Van Halen, fucking amazing guitar player.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Eddie could shred just crazy. When I was 5 years old, I was exposed to Van Halen on MTV, because at 5 years old, my life was Sesame Street and MTV, because my older brother, I saw the joke.
A balanced diet.
Yeah, it's a balanced diet, man. I learned how to count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, get up on the couch, jump off like David Lee Roth did in the Jump video. 1, 2, 3. There you go. You jump, get your ass kicked by your parents for jumping off the couch because you're jumping off the couch. But then seeing Van Halen, Billy Idol, and the Beastie Boys, 5 years old.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty much in Sesame Street. Yeah, that pretty much was my life at 5 years old. I remember going in the bathroom and trying to spike my hair like Billy Idol. My mom's like,
"Yeah, he was the shit, man. He was great."
Yeah, my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I'm sitting there, trying to spike my hair like Billy Idol, and she yelled at my brother. It's like, "What are you doing to her? What are you doing to your brother?" And then just I had a pretty good childhood, getting exposed to a lot of good things, and seeing and listening to a lot of good stuff, man. I mean, it's just it was great. I had good times, bad times. I wouldn't take nothing in the world, like if I had to do it again, totally. I would do it again without having the bad, but just a lot of good and everything. I just love it.
Yeah, man.
It's funny because my 2-year-old daughter, I was sitting right here on the computer one day, and I was going through music, and she wanted daddy, so I sat her on my lap right here, and we sitting there going through YouTube, and I started playing some rock music, and she's sitting there bobbing her head up and down and stuff and everything. I'm like, yeah, that's my daughter. And my wife says, I tried to do that with her with music. I'm like, what are you playing? Well, pop and stuff. I was like, that's why. I was like, she likes what daddy likes because daddy rocks.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's just good times, man. Good times. But I wanna thank you for coming on tonight and talking with me, talking about your films. Had a great time, and just everything that's going to be coming out for 2020. And I'm really excited. And I know we talked about social media earlier, and where can people find you at on social media?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. It's like if you just type in my name, Jeremiah Kipp. There's Jeremiah's pretty rare name, so like you can find me pretty easily. I accept most friends, so like if you're curious about like movies and genre stuff, hit me up and we'll keep the conversation going.
Excellent. And speaking of social media, before I do mention social media for myself, I do want to make an announcement that next week on the Everett Lee Show, Tuesday night, January 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, I will have none other than film director Tom Ryan and host of the Imaginarium with Scott and Todd Staruch of the Theater of Terror Anthology. It will be streaming live on twitch.tv/TheEverettLee and right here on facebook.com/TheEverettLee. And you can keep up with the Everett Lee Show on podcastcity.net, your top source for independent podcasting. Follow them on Facebook, Podcast City Network. Send them a tweet over on Twitter at podcastcitynet, and subscribe and follow them on YouTube, Podcast City Network. Everett Lee Show, you can follow me, give me a like and a thumbs up and a follow on Facebook, The Everett Lee Show. Send me a tweet over on Twitter at The Everett Lee. Hit me up on Instagram, Everett Lee Show. And to listen to audio portions of this podcast and previous release podcast, head over to my YouTube channel, Everett Lee Show. Subscribe to that. Stitcher Radio, Everett Lee Show's available there. iTunes and on Podbeam. So download those apps for your phone and log in and leave a comment and a rating for the Everett Lee Show. And ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Everyone have a good night, and I will see you next week for another episode of the Everett Lee Show. Peace.